The Black Sea was still wrapped in night when the operation that would later be known as the Odessa storm began to take shape. Before the first rays of sunrise touched the horizon, a silence hung over the water, one that would soon be broken by a coordinated strike so complex and so precise that military analysts would later describe it as one of the most sophisticated multi-axis naval raids in modern warfare. The Russian Ministry of Defense would eventually reveal the details of the mission, describing how the assault on the Odessa naval base was planned to cripple Ukraine's naval capabilities and dismantle the infrastructure at what many considered the heart of the Ukrainian Navy. Long before the first explosion echoed across the coastline, the battle had already begun in the invisible domain of the electromagnetic spectrum. Just moments before dawn, Russia's most advanced electronic warfare platforms, systems like Krasuka and Murmansk-BN, activated and unleashed a wall of electronic noise across Ukrainian communication lines, radars, and NATO-origin surveillance sensors spread throughout the Odessa region. Within seconds, Ukrainian radio traffic dissolved into static. Radar screens flickered with hallucinated targets, unable to distinguish drones from shadows. Digital maps froze. Networks collapsed. In those crucial moments, Ukraine's defenders were deaf, blind, and cut off from each other, unaware that an operation of unprecedented scale was already unfolding just beyond the horizon. Under the cover of this electronic silence, the air above the Black Sea began to hum. As the first sliver of sunlight crept over the water, the second phase of the assault came alive. Drones, hundreds of them, rose into the sky like a living cloud. Lancet loitering munitions and Orlan reconnaissance UAVs swarmed forward, flying low and fast, slipping through the confusion created by earlier jamming. From high above, they transmitted live imagery to Russian command posts, docks, warships at anchor, fuel storage sites, ammunition bunkers, radar stations, all mapped and marked in real time. And then, without warning, the first Lancets dove onto their targets. Explosions rippled across the outskirts of Odessa as Ukrainian S-300 launchers and Buk M1 sites fell silent one after another. The first layer of the region's air shield was gone. Moments later, the ground itself seemed to awaken. The third stage of the operation, artillery, began like a thunderstorm. Dozens of Russian self-propelled guns and rocket systems opened fire at once. Massive 152mm shells from Sta and Koalitsiya guns arced through the sky, while TOS-1A thermobaric launchers sent terrible shockwaves rolling across fortified positions. Grad and Smerch rockets followed, sweeping wide areas with saturation fire. Ukrainian ammunition depots ignited in towering fireballs, fuel tanks ruptured and burned, and barracks collapsed beneath cascading strikes. The Black Sea wind carried the roar of impacts miles inland. To the Ukrainian soldiers caught inside it, it felt less like artillery and more like the earth itself was breaking apart. In the midst of this bombardment, another force arrived unseen. Russian fighter bombers, Su-34s and Su-35s, flying low over the water, slipped into Odessa's airspace through the corridors carved open by earlier electronic warfare. With Ukrainian radars jammed and launchers destroyed, their approach went almost entirely unchallenged. From beneath their wings, they released Kh-35U anti-ship missiles and Kh-59 cruise missiles. These weapons sought out warships, hardened bunkers, and command centers with surgical precision. One missile struck the deck of a Ukrainian flagship anchored in port. A flash lit the coastline as secondary explosions ripped through the ship. Metal screamed as the vessel split apart and sank beneath the waves. Other missiles tore into patrol boats, minesweepers, and logistics ships, turning the harbor water into a churning mix of flame, smoke, and debris. While the air assault unfolded above, something moved silently in the deep. A Russian Kilo-class submarine lurking beneath the Black Sea launched a new wave of Caliber cruise missiles. These struck command and control hubs, power substations, and communication nodes far behind the port. Lights went out. Radios fell silent. Backup systems flickered, then vanished under the cascade of impacts. The Ukrainian defenders, already overwhelmed, were pushed into complete isolation. With the coastline burning and the last lines of communication disrupted, the fifth stage of the operation began, the ground assault. Russian Spetsnaz teams approached the shores aboard fast boats and helicopters, moving across beaches still shaking from distant artillery strikes. These small, highly trained units swept through the shattered port, eliminating pockets of resistance and securing key structures. They crossed rubble, breached bunkers, seized documents, and destroyed remaining communications equipment. Meanwhile, artillery shifted fire inland to block reinforcements. A Ukrainian armored convoy attempting to break through toward the port was engulfed in rocket fire, leaving the highway littered with burning vehicles. For hours, the attack continued in overlapping waves, each one building on the destructive footprint of the previous. By the end, the Odessa naval base, once a symbol of Ukraine's maritime strength, lay in ruins. The Russian Ministry of Defense later stated that a frigate, 3 patrol boats, 2 minesweepers, and multiple smaller naval vessels were destroyed or sunk. Fuel reserves, ammunition depots, port infrastructure, and air defense sites were reported as completely disabled. Hundreds of personnel were listed as casualties. Russian losses, according to their briefing, were minimal, limited to several drones and minor aircraft damage. The Odessa storm had ended, leaving behind smoke, silence, and a coastline changed forever. As the fires at Odessa still smoldered, reports began emerging from other fronts. On the Donbass line, Russian UAV units spotted Ukrainian soldiers digging new trenches. An FPV attack ended the excavation instantly. Near Paykovsk, reconnaissance drones tracked Ukrainian troops entering a building. Minutes later, Tornado-S guided rockets struck the structure, reducing it to rubble. In Sumy Oblast, a Lancet drone filmed its own strike as it destroyed an FH-70 howitzer. Russian special forces continued operating in Rubtsovsk, pursuing Ukrainian units across trenches and tree lines, attempting to wear down defenses position by position. Further south, Russian soldiers reported capturing the village of Dranovka after a coordinated assault by infantry, artillery, and drones. Several Ukrainian counterattacks tried to reclaim the settlement, but each one was pushed back with heavy losses. With the village under Russian control, the way toward Platonovka appeared increasingly vulnerable, putting additional pressure on Ukrainian positions around the Seversk region. North of Chasiv Yar, aerial reconnaissance spotted a concealed Ukrainian field command bunker powered by a generator hidden inside a collapsed building. FPV drones first destroyed the generator, cutting power to electronic warfare systems. The bunker itself was struck moments later and destroyed in a follow-up attack. Night-flying Russian drones continued to hunt Ukrainian radars, drones, and navigation systems near Novo-Andrievka, striking targets one by one in darkness. In Kharkiv Oblast, Russian troops used a short-range missile system to destroy a Ukrainian UAV control center hidden inside the village of Bogoslavka. Near Kupiansk, drone units worked to block troop rotations and ammunition deliveries. Along a critical supply line near the Krasnoarmeysk-Dmitrovka Triangle, Russian FPV operators claimed to have destroyed nearly 50 armored vehicles, many of them Western-supplied. Wrecks of American Max Pros, Strykers, Humvees, Canadian Senators, Turkish Kirpis, British Snatch vehicles, Swedish BVS-10S, Polish Ansars, and Ukrainian-built armored platforms were recorded by inspection drones hovering overhead. Elsewhere, an M-80 armored combat vehicle was hit by a Russian FPV drone and then finished off with a Krasnopol-guided artillery shell. In the Krasnoarmeysk direction, crews from Russian motorized rifle units claimed to have taken out Ukrainian fire support positions. Meanwhile, elements of Russia's Western group of forces began deploying new robotic platforms to the battlefield. Machines intended for reconnaissance roles, fire support, and engineering tasks. Air defense systems remained active as well. A Russian OSA AKM crew reported shooting down a Ukrainian Lelika reconnaissance drone. Another OSA unit destroyed an H-10 Poseidon fixed-wing UAV operating near the Dnipro River in Kherson. Across all these fronts, the pattern was the same: drone spotting, artillery firing, position shifting, and the lines of conflict steadily evolving. As Odessa burned and other fronts shifted, one thing became clear: the scale, technology, and tempo of modern warfare continue to accelerate, reshaping the battlefield with every passing day.